Hi, so I wanted to overview an example of conditional logic and really show how we can use it to tell us a lot of things about data and how we can get it to particular results. So in the example you're seeing here, I just went ahead and laid out the weather forecast for the next 10 days. So we have our high temperature, low temperature, the weather, what it's supposed to be like, and the average temperature. So this average I calculated, I just added these two together and divided by 2. And we're not going to go anything crazy. This is just going to be, for simplicity's sake. So what I want to know is what should I wear based on this chart down here, depending on the weather. Because if it's really cold, I should probably wear something a little bit more substantial. But if it's really hot, that might feel like too much. And maybe I want to just wear like shorts and a tank top on a really hot sunny day, as opposed to if it's a really cold snowy day where it's like blizzarding, then maybe I should double up the pants and wear a heavy winter coat. So this is kind of going to be the difference. We're going to go ahead and use this example. I will add in the notes to this recording, the template to this, so you can play around with it. You can make it your own. And I really do encourage you to, if you're watching this, I really encourage you to look at my template, use it, or make your own. So we're going to start by kind of assessing, like, we have these days down here about the possible weather, and we want to know first if it's a hot day, if it's a nice day, or if it's a cold day. So in this example, we have our average temperature. That's what I'm going to use to figure out if it's a hot day, a nice day, or a cold day. So this is really where the conditional logic comes in, because we want to be able to say, if, in this case, our average temperature, but if something meets these conditions, then it's this. And so there's going to be a couple nested if statements that you're going to see here. I'm using Excel solely because I feel that Excel is one of the better programs to learn how to use conditional logic on. I'm also going to move my face and everything over here, so hopefully that's a little easier to see. I will expand the formula bar a little bit, so it will be easier to see kind of what I'm doing. And what I'm eventually going to do, what I'm eventually working towards, is putting the forecast and kind of like what I should wear in this box. So for us to first figure out, like, what kind of weather day are we going to have? Is it temperature-wise? Is it going to be hot? Is it going to be nice? Or is it going to be cold? I am going to start by saying, we have our minimum parameters. So in this case, that's going to be if the average temperature is between X and Y, it's going to be a nice day. So if it's going to be between this green one and this red one, it's going to be a nice day. And if it's going to be between this blue one, oh, that's kind of an ugly blue. We're going to pick a prettier blue. Okay. If it's going to be between this blue one and this green one, then it's going to be considered a cold day. If it's above this orange one, then it is a hot day. So this is how we're kind of going to go ahead and set our parameters. So this is going to be a hot day, nice day, and cold day. So with this being said, we need to go through and figure out, okay, what temperatures do we want to have it calculate as a hot day, nice day, or cold day? So for me, I live in Arizona. I'm kind of a baby when it comes to the cold, but I'm pretty tolerant when it comes to the heat. So for me, if it's above like 80 degrees Fahrenheit, then that's kind of a hot day. If it's above 65, if it's between, let's say, 65 and 80, that's typically, 65 might actually be a little low. Let's go ahead and do 70. And since all of these are between 60 and 80, we'll just keep it simple. So cold day is really going to be anything under 70 degrees, and a hot day is going to be anything over 70 degrees, or over 80 degrees. So really, we don't even necessarily need this nice day column. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Oh, shoot. I just deleted a day, my bad. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete this nice day. And what we're gonna have our hot day parameters and our cold day parameters. And then the nice day will just be anything in between this. So this is going to be a max temperature and a min temperature. So a hot day needs to be minimum 80 degrees on average, and we'll say 75 for the purpose of this example. Hot day needs to be minimum 75 degrees, and a cold day needs to be maximum 65 degrees. So anything that's not below 65 or above 75 will be classified as a nice day. So next we need to figure out, okay, are these days warm or cold? So I'm going to go ahead and take this and I'm going to start writing a formula here. So if this temperature right here, and we're going to, because we're using Excel, we're going to go ahead and put in the $ in front of the E so that if we drag it down, it's going to keep it in this column. We're not going to put one in front of the 9 because we don't want it to stay in this row. We just want it to stay in this E column. So if E9 is greater than 75, well, really it should be greater than or equal to 75. And then this one, we are going to put the $ in front of both. That will lock it to this cell specifically. So if we drag it down, it'll always pull from this value. So if our average temperature is higher than what we've set for our minimum value, higher or equal to what we've set our minimum value for our hot day, then in this if statement, so you have your expression, so what you're telling the computer to figure out, and then if that's true, we are going to return it as hot or cold. So in this case, we're going to have to do a nested if statement because we have multiple lines. And this is really what the conditional logic thrives on, is this type of structure. So this is called a Boolean structure. That's when you have a true, a false, a 1 or a 0, or it could be yes, no, anything really where there's two results. So conditional logic works best when you have, stuff like this. Not necessarily best, but it's one of the easiest ways to kind of wrap your head around how all of it works, is to understand, like, if it matches these conditions, then it's this. If not, maybe it matches these conditions and then it's this. So we're going to go ahead and say if E9 is greater than J8, so if our average temperature is greater than our minimum value for a hot day, then we're going to go ahead and return this value, hot day. And we are also going to put our little $ in there to keep it locked. If not, so this is where we get to the fun part, right? So if it's not a hot day, we still need to be able to figure out if it's a nice day or if it's a cold day. So for us to figure out if it's a cold day, but we know it doesn't meet this condition, then we're going to go ahead and say if E9, and we're going to put the $ in front of the E to keep it locked here, is greater than or equal to this value. Well, really, we want it to be greater than, not greater than or equal to. Is greater than the maximum value to what we've determined would be a cold day, then nice day, right? And I'm going to go ahead, and since I'm writing this in a formula, I'm going to write in, quote, nice day. That will return this text value. If it's not a hot day or a nice day, it must be a cold day, right? And even still, I'm actually going to go ahead and flip this equation around to kind of hopefully drive it home. So we're going to go ahead and say if E9, instead of saying is greater than this, we're going to say if it's less than or equal to our maximum value for a cold day. Then we're going to return the value cold day. So now if you see we're getting a false value up here, right? So that means it didn't meet the criteria in our first if statement. It hasn't met the criteria in our second if statement. What's next? We need an alternative. So if it's neither a hot nor a cold day, it's a nice day. So this is what we're going to have it return, and we can just use the autofill feature here. So really quickly, I just want to illustrate why it's so important to use our dollar signs. So if I take this one out, for example, it doesn't affect this, right? But then if we try to drag it down, yeah, our stuff's broken because it's trying to find this as our value to return when we want it to stay as this. So that's why we use the dollar signs, is to lock the formula in a particular cell. So let me just go ahead and fix that. So we have everything determined. We know what's a nice day, what's a cold day. Now we need to figure out what it is that we wear on those days. So we're going to use the same process in general, but we have a couple more conditions we have to meet, right? So we need to know, is it a hot day, a nice day, or a cold day? And what's the weather going to be like? Because a hot sunny day is a little different than a hot, rainy day. So in this case, we are going to show what we're going to wear. So we're going to always start with our equal sign. We're going to start writing this formula. We are going to actually use a different kind of conditional logic formula. We are going to use what's called an index and match. So indexing, the index is, we're going to tell it, this is where you look and pull the value that you come across. So the reason we're going to use an index and match is because we're going to have we have a table. We're not just searching singular values in a single column. We need it to return, potentially all of these 12 options. And it could depend on a lot of different factors. So that's why we're going to go ahead and use an index match formula instead of a nested if statement. Index match is almost twice as powerful, if not more, than a nested if statement. And if you're looking to get a really specific value, index match is going to be the way to go. So we're going to start with our index. Our reference, and I'll bring down the help text so you can see it. So our reference is going to be the area we're going to tell it to search. So you want to make sure that you have the whole area. So you're just going to select everything. And we are going to lock those values in place. And now we need to tell it which row to look in. So we need to tell it to match our weather, our forecasted weather for the day, with our possible weather in our little category down here. So in this particular case, so we need it to match. So what match is going to do is it's going to tell us which number it connects to, essentially. So if our match value, we're going to tell it to search this value. We're going to tell it to search our weather value. And we're going to lock the column in place, not the row, but the column with that dollar sign. We're going to tell it to look for that here. And we're going to lock that entire range into place. We only want it to search here. We don't want it to search elsewhere. And we are going to have our search type be 0. So our search type is another form of Boolean values. So 0 is exact. So if you want it to be exactly sunny, which in this case we do, we select that. If not, it will find basically the closest thing it can. So if you select like -1 or 1, it will determine based on kind of this like search help here, you can see that the 1 is going to search for a larger value, the -1 is going to search for a smaller value. So this search type we're going to put as 0 because we want it to be exact. So let's just go ahead and tell it to pull from column 2 in this instance. So you see how this is going to tell us that it's a sunny day. So it looked up that this is sunny. And since we put column 2, that's telling us, okay, hot day. But we don't want it to stay column 2. We want that to also be variable. So we want that to also be a condition in and of itself. So instead of saying column 2, we're going to use another match. We are going to have it search this value. We're going to lock that column in place. We're going to tell it to search for that value here in this top row. We're going to lock that whole search area in place. And we're also going to have this be 0. So it's also going to have to be exact. So we want our weather and then our possible day to have to match exactly. So we can autofill that in, and then that will tell us. So on Tuesday, it's a rainy day, and it's kind of cold. So we should probably wear pants and a raincoat. That is a really good way for us to know, like, we have all these conditions, and we're telling it to sort by all these conditions to get us the one value we want. So that's where a lot of this conditional logic really comes into play. Because we have to know, to be able to figure out what to wear, we need to know what's the high and low temperature for the day? What is the weather for the day? What's the average temperature? We need to calculate that value. If it meets various parameters, that average temperature will be categorized as either a hot or a cold day. And then based on whether or not it's a hot or a cold day and the weather, that's what's going to return us what to wear for the day. So we have a lot of things going on here. So we know what we're wearing for all of these days. And we're going to do one last thing, just because I'm kind of a completist. We are going to create another formula. And we're going to, in this case, concatenate. So what concatenation does is it just adds everything together in a text string. So for any direct text, we need this to be in quotes. So we're going to say on this day here, and then you also need to separate all of the strings by commas. So on this day, and we want it to I'm gonna actually delete all this for a second. So if you noticed, when I put in this value right here, it pulls up this 44645. So Excel I forget what actually the start date that Excel does, but that's essentially the number of days since Excel's formula starts calculating days. So we don't want this 44645 value. That doesn't make any sense to us. So we are going to do a date time. It might be under format. There should be a date time parse. I'll pull it up. Okay. Well, we'll just go ahead and say, we'll back up because I don't know why it's not pulling up the date time format formula. But So this string, we want it to say where, and then we're going to have it look up the value of what to where. So I don't know if it'll let me move this at all. But basically, we're going to tell it to search using this value. So if this is the date we want it to tell us what to wear, we're going to have it search for this value. We're going to tell it to search for this value in this date column. And once it finds that value here, we're going to tell it to look up the corresponding result here. So we're going to lock all that in place. And then we are also going to add a little extra phrase, and we're going to say the average, the day should be, and then we're just going to copy and paste this value here because we want it to, in this case, we're going to have it look up whether or not it's going to be a nice day, a hot day, a cold day, and then we're also going to return the average temperature. So all of these values that we calculated for, we're going to have it return in this cell. So the day should be a nice day. Well, I don't know actually what that day should be, but we're going to take our copy and paste lookup formula. And instead of pulling from G, we're going to pull from one column earlier. So we're going to pull from F. So the day should be a whatever day. With an average temperature of, we're going to copy and paste that lookup formula again. And we're going to, instead of telling it to look in F, we're going to tell it to look in E. With an average temperature of whatever. And then we're just going to add degrees. Oh, I do not know how to spell Fahrenheit. So we're just going to leave it at degrees. So that's our formula. Let's see how it turns out. So wear shorts and a tank top. The day should be a hot day with an average temperature of 75.5 degrees. And we asked it to look up for the 25th. So what to wear tomorrow, essentially. So that's all returning properly. The only thing we are actually going to change is we're going to change this to lowercase because I feel like it looks weird. And then we just have to go into this formula and change this to a lowercase n so that it looks normal and a lowercase d. And then once that's done, then we can just drag that down. It'll update everywhere. So there we have it. Using conditional logic, we figured out what we should wear based on the forecast. So hopefully this makes sense. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. And yeah, excited for the next one.